everybody. Today we're going to be reviewing a film called Hunger. It is a late 2008 film directed by Steve McQueen, not to be confused with the Steve McQueen of Bullet and The Great Escape fame. It's his first film. It's gained, I believe, over 70 international awards at film festivals and from critic circles. It's a very low budget film. It's actually factually based. It's based on the hunger strike led by an imprisoned Irish Republican Army member named Bobby Sands in the 1980s. In this film he's played by Michael Fassbender, who you might recognize as the British spy in *Inglourious Bastards* or one of the 300 Spartans in 300. Yeah, that's basically the background on the film. So to start things off, this film is, let me say it, it's just very bare bones. There's little to no dialogue. I'd say dialogue accounts for maybe 25% of the film, and the film runs at about an hour and a half. No camera tricks. It's just filmed how it is. There's even a low use of differing angles. The director in this film uses many of the same shots. For example, there's one shot in the movie that's a continuous 17-minute take involving the main character and a priest, and that's where most of the dialogue also takes place. Yeah, the lighting was almost all natural. And it was very real, very gritty. The content of the movie is not cheery. It's before it centers on the protagonist of the film. We kind of get a look at how things are running inside the prison, and the prisoners, the IRA members, are treated horribly, and they live in absolutely horrible conditions. Probably some of the worst I've ever seen. It just that's what struck me immediately. The film is very gritty. I like that, though. I haven't seen too many films that presented its characters in such a low fashion, yet it was nice because they still seemed that they had an objective and they weren't just degenerates. They employ a lot of tactical ways to resist their oppression by the guards. I'll let you watch the movie to see how that plays out. Yeah, the story was interesting. The main character, Michael Fassbender, he played the character very well. His lines were great. His character was really real and determined and had a set goal without, he didn't have to be the cookie cutter kind of protagonist. He was not your everyday character, but I mean, it's a real person, so I'm not sure if that's what the real Bobby Sands was like, but he puts himself through quite a ordeal to make his point. A hunger strike isn't something I would undertake to get my message across, I guess. But yeah, there isn't any dialogue except for a few scenes, but it doesn't really need the dialogue. I would say that the shots tell you what's going on, and they captures your attention. It's really just a really good film. I'd have to say that I'd give it 8 out of 10.
Alright, so yeah, I like this movie as well. I liked a lot of the techniques that the filmmaker employed to basically bring you the grittiness. There's no punches pulled. It showed you every bit of violence in this film. It wasn't the violence itself wasn't it wasn't shockingly violent, and it wasn't very gratuitous violence, but the violence was about as realistic as you could get. It looked like they were actually doing these things to each other, and there wasn't I find a lot of the things that happen in regular cinema when they're when you film a fight scene or something, there's a lot of cutting and a lot of, there's a lot of audio work. They add a lot of sound effects, whereas this film, everything that was happening sounded like they were picking it up on a boom mic, or it sounded like it was mic'd, and none of the sounds sounded like added in. So that kind of like added to this sort of like very real feeling you got from watching the violence in the film. Another thing I liked about this movie is that it's obviously talking about like a very controversial subject and something that's like relevant like in our day and age as well. So like with all kinds of prisons and horrible things happening in prisons like Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo Bay and stuff. So it's like kind of relevant to like 20 years later, or more like almost 30 years later. So it shows like different perspectives. For example, the film starts and it's following the perspective, more or less the perspective of a prison guard, and kind of showing it from his angle. And then it switches to two guys that aren't Bobby Sands, and it shows their point of view because they were kind of involved in the no wash blanket. What would you call it? Strike. Yeah. No wash blanket strike. So it shows sort of like it follows these characters to kind of illustrate to the viewer what that meant, the no wash and the blanket strike meant, and then it takes Bobby Sands and kind of shows it from his perspective. There was like no dialogue in this movie, except for the conversation between Bobby Sands and the priest. I'd say that's about 95% of all the dialogue in this film. The two prisoners that it shows, I think there's maybe 2 or 3 times they speak, they tell each other's names. There's one point where the guards are going to come in and kind of pull them out of their cell, and the one guy says to the other guy, "Get ready." And that's about, I think, about almost all the dialogue between them. There's scenes where their family comes and sees them, but the way that the audio was mixed in those scenes was that you can hear their conversation, but you can't like really hear the words, and it's like mixed into the background noise. So there's like no filter, like they're not filtering out the background noise. So you can't really tell what they're saying to one another. Like that they're all talking to each other, and you can hear them talking. Just you can't hear the particular words, or not enough of a sentence to really figure out the content of their conversation. So I thought that kind of made this movie, really made me feel like an objective observer, because it wasn't kind of splicing me into like little bits of their conversations, and I wasn't really, aside from the conversation between Bobby Sands and the priest. So I think that's something I also really liked about this movie, because it is such a controversial topic. It didn't seem as though it was really making me pick a side, or that the film had picked the side already. It was just kind of showing me what had happened. At no point are you ever thinking that whether his hunger strike is like just or not. You're just kind of seeing what it really meant, I guess, at that time. And the way that his starvation was like filmed was like very realistic, and it looked as though he really was starving to death. And it like Ben Kingsley and Gandhi, the Machinist, Christian Bale, they don't got anything on this man. He's like, the actor's actually starving. Like, he looks like just totally like emaciated. Like, he looked like he was gonna die.
Yeah, it did get pretty near the end when he was a good while into his strike. He didn't look like a healthy human being, and that's not just saying the character. I would imagine with the low budget that a lot of the effects there was none. I mean,
he had a bit of makeup, and that was about it, probably.
Yeah, he was deathly skinny, and that's not something any actor can say they've done to play a role.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's what I give this movie. Probably like, I guess I'll stick with the out of 10 system. I'll probably give this movie like 9.5 out of 10, maybe even 10 out of 10. It captured me throughout. It had no music. It had very little speaking at all, but it's still, every scene captured my interest. I thought it was great. So I guess,
yeah.
anything else to add?
No, that's good.
Yeah. Then see you guys later.